The Unai Emery era begins as Arsenal open their Premier League account at the Emirates up against Pep Guardiola's Manchester City, the champions of the Premier League, and Arsenal fall to a quite gutting 2-0 defeat and are absolutely battered by Manchester City in the process. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a brand new series of Analysing Arsenal, my #1 football series on this YouTube channel, where I give you guys my thoughts and feelings to every single Arsenal game of the brand new season. And we start at the Emirates with match review 1 as Arsenal hosted Manchester City. We've got a lot to talk about in this video, so sit back, relax and get comfy. Now, this isn't a rant. Let me just say first and foremost, yes, we have lost to Manchester City on the opening day of the season, but I'm not ranting. I'm not ranting, I'm not angry, I'm a little bit upset. And, I'm frustrated more than anything, but I'm not angry. And the reason why I'm not angry is because, over the summer, we have made significant changes, first and foremost. And I know I spoke about a little bit in pre-season with my new Analysing Arsenal series when the news was revealed that Unai Emery was the Arsenal manager. Also looking at some of our signings. And I will do an official preview over the next kind of coming days in relation to Arsenal season. But, I've been crying out for change at Arsenal for many, many, many years. Going into my 11th year as an Arsenal fan, I've known one manager for my entire life, and I do believe that Arsene Wenger was the cause of all of these problems, and the only way that Arsenal are going to, start to improve is by getting a new manager. And we've got, a new set of players, we've got a brand new manager, and we've got, a whole and a brand new kind of coaching staff, and, it's all changed really at the Emirates. And up against Manchester City, who were the best side in the Premier League by a country mile, they're in a league of their own, they got 100 points, the most any Premier League side has ever got by winning the Premier League title last season. It was a tough test, and it was a tall order really. And I think, building up to this game, my head was saying that, that 2-0 result that we saw today was going to be the result that we were going to see throughout, the game. And, is anybody really surprised that we lost in the way that we lost? No. But my heart was saying that maybe, just maybe, we have a chance. But, it certainly has answered questions that I had in relation to the way that Unai Emery is going to play. It answers some questions in regards to the players that are at Unai Emery's disposal, and it has made the picture a little bit clearer. Having said that, and this is to all Arsenal fans, myself included, this is not a time to panic. This is not the time to panic whatsoever. The season has just started. Facing Manchester City is as tough as you're probably going to get. It's early days. There is going to be, a period of, transition. Okay, and it's going to take time for these players to gel, for these players to kind of fit to the instructions that Unai Emery is kind of, asking and kind of declaring to his players. This is how he wants to play. It's going to take players, a little bit of time to get into how, exactly the way that Unai Emery wants to play. And, it's a long process. And I also think what they also said in co-commentary, which I, certainly believe, is that for Arsenal to get back to, being title contenders, because we're not title contenders. Our main aim is to get back into, the Champions League, and also, win either the Europa League, the FA Cup, or a Carabao Cup as well. We're nowhere near, title contenders, and it's probably going to take at least 2 to 3, good transfer windows, not just transfer windows, 2 to 3 good transfer windows to get back to where Arsenal, want to be. But let me kind of explain my thoughts and feelings, what I noticed from Unai Emery's Arsenal side, and also just the game in general, because, there was a lot of optimism going into the game. I was, extremely optimistic, and why wouldn't you be? Brand new manager. We've been crying out for a new manager for many, many years. We finally got that brand new manager, and, I felt that this was the perfect time to play Manchester City, not just because of the fact that their strongest side wasn't at Pep Guardiola's disposal. De Bruyne was on the bench, Sané was on the bench, Jesus was on the bench, and coming back off of the World Cup, City are not going to be at top gear. Even though today they were absolutely scintillating. The scary thing about this Manchester City side is that they didn't even play to the standard that they can get to. and they, you know, absolutely battered Arsenal in the process by not even getting to 100%. So, you know, before the game kind of kicked off, I was confident. You know, I didn't think that we were going to win. It was actually one of those games that I couldn't really give you guys a prediction because I didn't know what was going to happen. Very early on, what I noticed, and these are kind of the couple of things that I've noticed from just kind of the first 90 minutes and what Unai Emery wants to do, is that he's all about, you know, the high pressure, which is absolutely great, you know, and it's great to constantly and consistently press teams throughout the 90 minutes. But Arsenal weren't getting that right. You know, they weren't pressing Manchester City effectively, and 9 times out of 10 Manchester City were turning on the screws. They were kind of reversing it on Arsenal, and, you know, Arsenal were making mistakes by doing that. Also, what also concerns me is the fact that Arsenal were consistently playing out from the back. Now, you know, it's the modern day game. It's the way that Unai Emery has always played, and his teams have always played out of the back. And, you know, Pep Guardiola is a manager that likes to play out from the back. And, you know, it wasn't working. We were making far too many mistakes. City were capitalising on those mistakes. They didn't really punish us from those mistakes. You know, there was so many moments where, you know, we were playing out, passing out from the back. It then fell to Manchester City, who were 1-on-1, and they just didn't, you know, take their chance. Or Petr Cech saved us with making a ridiculous save. But there were so many opportunities and moments where we were trying to play out from the back. It just wasn't working. City were getting the ball back and then trying to hurt us, and they almost did. You know, 2-0 on Manchester City's part is flattering for Arsenal, really. And kind of in the first kind of 20 minutes of the game, we were absolutely dominated, really. We started, you know, fairly well in the kind of the first kind of 3 to 4 minutes. You know, we were pressing Manchester City. We were getting into some kind of, you know, dangerous areas, but we weren't really doing anything with that danger, and that was a recurrent pattern that ran throughout the entire game. You know, and that is where the frustration kind of comes into its own, because I was sitting there and there were so many times, there were so many moments where, you know, Arsenal would be, you know, 1-on-1 and they would sky it, or they would be offside on 3 or 4 occasions, or, you know, we were creating chances and we did look dangerous, you know, throughout parts, but we didn't really cause Edison any kind of major trouble. We didn't cause him any kind of further problems, and we were wasteful going forward. So, you know, we weren't playing out properly from the back. We were having trouble pressing Manchester City. We weren't being clinical enough going forward, and we just kept giving the ball away. I think I counted at least 23 individual moments as I was keeping track throughout the game, and, you know, don't misquote me on that. It was around, you know, we gave the ball so many times, and it felt like it was 20 to 25 times throughout the 90 minutes where we just kept giving the ball away. And I just think that, you know, it comes with the teething. There are teething problems, obviously, with a new manager. You know, Arsene Wenger's style to Unai Emery's style, they are at the complete ends of the spectrum, you know. But I just felt that Arsenal just didn't really know what they were doing. And, you know, you could, you know, clearly see that. What was encouraging, however, though, was I was very, very impressed with Lichtsteiner, who didn't start, but Maitland-Niles, I mean, also, I don't agree with that. You know, Maitland-Niles is not a right back. He plays in midfield, and he got absolutely ripped apart, you know, by Walker, by Mahrez down that right-hand side. And he actually got injured, you know, on 25 minutes. And actually, I think, and, you know, I don't normally say this, but I was actually glad that he came off injured, because Lichtsteiner, even though he's old and he's not the quickest, with his experience of what he could bring to the table, he did fare better. And I thought, actually, he did rather well. I was very, very happy with Guendouzi. I think that's how you pronounce it. He was absolutely scintillating. I saw him in pre-season and I was really impressed by him. Almost looks a little bit like David Luiz, and I thought he did, you know, very well in the midfield. I wish Unai Emery started Torreira. There must have been a reason why Lucas Torreira wasn't started, because he's that ruthless kind of nasty bastard in the midfield that we need. He came on, you can't really judge him because he only came on and he made a brief cameo performance for around 15 minutes, and by then the game was already done and dusted. I think it would have been interested to see what he was going to do and what he would have done if he started and played the whole 90 minutes. I thought Sokratis and Mustafi did okay. Again, I think, you know, Mustafi just makes far too many, you know, mistakes, and I think both of them, you know, as a collective partnership in terms of being at the back, I don't think they're quick enough, and I think Manchester City found it pretty easy to get past them. They did okay. It was an average performance. Again, you can't really read too much into the game, but again, it was average. I thought Xhaka had an absolutely atrocious game. I can't, and I'm so surprised that he's still in this Arsenal side. I don't rate him. I think on his day he could be good, but he just makes far too many mistakes. He got another yellow card today. He gets a yellow card in pretty much every single game that I see him in, and I think he was one of our worst players to have. Don't think Xhaka did anything. Neither did Aaron Ramsey, but then Aaron Ramsey's only been back for a couple of weeks. You know, I don't think he did anything. And also Ozil, Mkhitaryan and Aubameyang. I mean, Aubameyang, you know, scored one goal, but it was offside. Again, he just didn't really do much, and I'm not putting the whole blame and, you know, putting everything towards Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, but again, I just didn't think he did enough. I think Ozil and Mkhitaryan, you know, the problem was is they were always going forward, and they needed to go back and help, you know, Bellerin and Maitland-Niles in defending. You know, you want your wing backs when you're pressing high and when you're playing out for your back, your wing backs are almost, you know, joining as almost having like a back six, particularly against Manchester City. You know, I thought when Lacazette came on, he did very, very well. I think I'd like to see Aubameyang and Lacazette start. I'm not sure if Unai Emery is going to play Leno more than Petr Cech. Personally, I would go with Leno, but I also thought Petr Cech actually had a very, very good game today. And without him, it would have been an embarrassing scoreline. I think, you know, the reason why Manchester City only kept it and only made it, you know, 2-0 was for two reasons. Firstly, because they weren't as clinical as they should be, but also I think, you know, Petr Cech saved, you know, at least 4 or 5, you know, ridiculous. He made 4 or 5 ridiculous saves. I wasn't, you know, entirely confident, and I'm never ever confident when Petr Cech's in goal. I think he is a liability now, but, you know, he did as well as he can. I've also, you know, the Manchester City goal, Sterling, I mean, again, it all came from Manchester City pressing Arsenal. Sterling then made a run around, he got to the edge of the box, went for a shot, and it was a wonderful strike. And, you know, there was a 10-minute period where kind of Manchester City started to panic. They started to time waste. They started to try and slow the game down, and they didn't need to. And then after that kind of, you know, 10 minutes of craziness, when Arsenal did look a little bit threatening, there was a chance where Aguero was 1-on-1. It came from another mistake where City just were testing Arsenal's back line. Aguero was 1-on-1. He had De Bruyne, who came on in the later stages of the second half, and he could have just squared it to Kevin De Bruyne, and, you know, he went for the shot, Cech made the save, and then 90 seconds later, Bernardo Silva again down the left-hand side, Mendy into Bernardo Silva, who slotted it into the top hand corner. And, you know, it was one of those games where I think on a better day, and on a day where Arsenal were more clinical, we would have scored, because, you know, Manchester City, and what was scary about Manchester City is that they weren't playing at full throttle. And, you know, they did make a couple of mistakes. Edison made a couple of mistakes in goal, but we couldn't capitalise on them, and we were far too wasteful going forward. We weren't understanding, and the way that Unai Emery wanted to play, we just didn't get it, and we couldn't get it. And, you know, you can't read too much into this game. As I said right at the start of the video, you know, Manchester City is a tough encounter. We're going to learn a lot more about this Arsenal side when we play Chelsea, which I do think we've got a much better chance of beating Chelsea than Manchester City. I think, you know, not many people are going to beat Manchester City this season. And even though I think Liverpool are going to win the Premier League title, City are not going to be far behind them, and it's either going to be Liverpool or Manchester City. You know, they are a cut from a different cloth, really. So, you know, over the 90 minutes, they battered Arsenal for the most part. I think Arsenal looked encouraging in stages, but then they were just far too wasteful. They didn't really, you know, cause Manchester City any kind of great kind of problem. And, you know, it was just one of those games which was far too easy for Manchester City. But it has answered, you know, questions about how Unai Emery is going to play and wants to play. And I think also that this is going to be much more that time will tell. And we can only really make a genuine observation about Unai Emery and the state of this Arsenal side when he's, you know, racked up 7, 8, you know, even 9 games. You know, you can't really, you know, really make a true kind of, you know, judgment in regards to Unai Emery and this Arsenal side after 1 game. It's going to be a long season. It's the toughest of tough starts, you know, the toughest starts you could possibly imagine facing Manchester City. We move on to next Saturday against Chelsea, and it doesn't get much more easier for Unai Emery. But that game, you know, is much more important now, because I said that if we can get 4 points, or, you know, 3 points from our first 2 games, or even 6 points out of 9, if we could beat Chelsea, then beat West Ham, or beat West Ham, get a draw, 4 points out of 9, you know, I'd take. It's not an easy kind of start to the season, but again, you know, I've laid down and given my initial answers to the questions regarding how Unai Emery is going to play and how this Arsenal side are going to react to Unai Emery's side. But those questions are going to be categorically answered as the season progresses, and there's going to be a lot more football content on this channel in regards to Arsenal and also the Premier League, so stay tuned. And I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Please let me know your thoughts and feelings down in the comment section below. Follow me on Twitter at Bagpuss998, and if you have enjoyed this video, please make sure to smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new around here, and check out my other great content as well. And yeah, the first game without Arsene Wenger in charge, and it didn't finish in the way that we wanted to, but certainly there is potential to this Arsenal side, but it wasn't the result we were looking for today. We move to Stamford Bridge next weekend. Until then, take care, and I shall speak to you all later. Take care, and I shall see you all very, very, very soon.